The first thing was not light. A sensation arrived before consciousness fully assembled itself, before the cold of the chamber, before the knowledge of where he was or how long the dark held him. Something in the stone beneath him resonated in a way it hadn't when he closed his eyes. It was quiet and specific, the kind of thing the body registers before the mind has a name for it. It arrived in his chest and stayed there. He carried something into the dark. He could feel it still. Then the rest of him returned. The chamber, the cold, air recycled through engineered silence for longer than he had a felt sense of. Time arriving, not as sensation but as knowledge, the way you know the shape of a room you have stood in 1,000 times without needing to see it. Edmund Carrington opened his eyes. The distances were uncertain at first, the edges slightly off, the way a familiar space looks in the first seconds after deep sleep before the brain catches up to the body. His mouth was dry. When he looked at his hands, they were exactly as he remembered them. He didn't know what to expect. Aldrich was already standing. His brother had always been that way. Other men woke and surfaced slowly, emerging from confusion and heaviness. Aldrich was the type to arrive. One moment under, the next upright, already reading the room. No adjustment period or surfacing required. Aldrich was simply present in a way Edmund spent 34 years watching, and never once seen explained. Edmund sat up. The stone floor was cold through the soles of his feet when he set them down. The ceiling was low enough that the chamber felt deliberate, built for function, not comfort. Light came from panels set into the upper walls, dim and spread so evenly across the room that shadows had nowhere to form. Temperature exactly what the engineering promised. Edmund had written the target number into the specification himself 1,000 years ago, and the room held it. The warmth in the stone beneath his feet came from below. It always had. That was why the chamber was here. He took the chamber in methodically. Walls undisturbed, archive seals visible through the far panel, intact. On the floor beside the sleep platform, where Edmund placed it on the night of the descent, sat the family's ledger, the original Carrington Covenant, bound in leather so old the cover had gone the color of charcoal, worn smooth at the spine by every hand that carried it. Edmund looked at it for a moment. Then he stood. The sensation in his chest was still there, sourceless except that it was coming from above, outside the estate, beyond the tunnels. From somewhere the archive had no instruments pointed. He had no category for it. He filed it and turned to find his brother already at the communication console. Aldrich didn't look up when Edmund crossed the chamber. In all their years living inside each other's orbit, he never once required confirmation that Edmund was present and functional. That certainty was the most accurate thing his brother ever believed about him, and the thing that always made the long habit of silence possible. 6 months, Aldrich said. His voice was exactly as Edmund remembered it. Clear, unhurried, carrying the precision of a man stating a fact rather than raising a concern. The calibration ran long. Edmund looked at the chamber readings, 6 months beyond the target window. Aldrich was 6 months wrong. The chambers compensated, Edmund said. Within acceptable range, Aldrich said. The transition itself triggered the final sequence, not the timer. He didn't dwell on it. Edmund moved to the archive panel and began the physical confirmation of the seals, methodical and unhurried, giving his hands something to do while his mind sat with the fact that Aldrich had been wrong about the timing and already moved past it. The seals were confirmed one by one, every encoded layer undisturbed, every document was exactly where it was left. Edmund said nothing about the 6 months. The communication went out while he was still running the checks, a compressed signal to Morrow's network, the first contact since the sleep, carrying authentication codes confirming that the Carrington brothers were awake and the window was open. Edmund heard the transmission initiate and continued working. Aldrich moved. Edmund followed when the movement was right and held position when it wasn't. 1,000 years of sleep didn't change how they moved through a room together. They waited. The chamber's silence had a different quality now than it did in the years before the sleep. Then it was the silence of preparation. 2 men holding everything still while they positioned pieces that would matter later. Now it was the silence of arrival. The plan survived. The question was what they were arriving into. At the console, Aldrich stood with his hands at his sides, looking at the wall in front of him. Edmund watched him from across the chamber and thought about the 6 months, about the prophetic indicators, the calendrical calculations, the accumulated intelligence of 700 years of Carrington archive brought to bear on the single question of when. The answer was 6 months from correct. Aldrich did not appear to be thinking about this. "The estate is intact," Aldrich said, reading Censor returns. "Enoch University is standing." Edmund said nothing. 1,000 years of Carrington preparation. The bloodline network held. The university was standing above the archive exactly where the plan put it. "The archive seals held completely," Edmund said. Aldrich nodded. That was the confirmation he was actually waiting for. The archive was what the sleep across the millennium reign was for. The archive was the mission. Edmund agreed with this. What Aldrich meant by the archive holding was the covenant, the knowledge base, the faction infrastructure, the operational engine of the Concord. What Edmund meant by it was the signal he encoded in the lowest level before the sleep, the counter-frequency he built into the archive's foundation for whoever would eventually need it, an encoding that went against everything Aldrich was building toward. The gap between those 2 meanings was the size of everything that actually mattered. He did not examine this thought long. He set it in the place he kept such thoughts and watched his brother wait for the response. The responses came back across 6 channels, staggered by seconds. All 6 primary headquarters were active. Aldrich read each confirmation without expression. House of Azazel, the bloodline of Cain, the 7th seal, the covenant of the written word, the calibrators, the children of the cauldron. All 6 factions answered to the Concord of fallen thrones, which meant the Concord held not just the branches, but the thing the branches existed to serve. Branch losses varied. The covenant of the written word's southern nodes went dark recently, recent enough that no one knew yet what it meant. The House of Azazel transmitted separately, flagged urgent. They had performed the rite of the descending flame, which was the pre-imprisonment protocol for direct communication with Satan and the realm he governed. The ritual worked through complex sequences of invocations timed to celestial alignment. Each step in the ritual sequence pulled the channel between the physical world and the abyss incrementally open, each layer descending deeper with each invocation until contact was established. The name of the ritual came from what the human vessels reported feeling when contact was made, from the tradition that Satan's presence, when it arrived, descended into them the way fire descends a wick, moving with purpose, illuminating the bones of the spirit with knowledge. The House of Azazel had been preparing since 1800 hours. The chamber and 3 conduits were in position. Chamber consecrated, celestial alignment confirmed, human hosts in position to receive the light. The celestial window calculated to the second, everything the rite required, exactly as it had been performed for thousands of years before Satan's imprisonment. The climax of the ritual was set for midnight, the precise moment of Christ's withdrawal and Satan's release, the single most powerful celestial window in 10,000 years of recorded history. The flame descended and found nothing. Their notation, in the entirety of recorded ritual history, a correctly executed rite of the descending flame at a confirmed celestial window, has never returned absence. Either the target is not present or the target is not what the protocol is designed to reach. The House of Azazel did not know which. The Children of the Cauldron attempted contact using secondary protocols 24 minutes after no response from the climax. We received a response from using this emergency backup protocol. Their senior rite practitioner described what returned in 3 words: present but unformed. Aldrich read the Cauldron's response a second time. Edmund watched him read it again and said nothing, the way he said nothing about the 6 months, the way he said nothing about 100 things across 34 years. The place where he kept such things was getting crowded. The chain held anyway. The transition occurred at midnight. Christ's 1,000-year reign ended. Satan's release happened. Tonight, Edmund said. An hour ago, Aldrich said. We woke up at the moment of it. The chambers caught the event signature. The sensation in Edmund's chest shifted, stronger now than when he first opened his eyes. From above and outside, consistent and present and pulling at something he didn't have language for. The third part of the response was a flagged intelligence packet from Morrow's field assets. Aldrich read it, paused, and passed it across without comment. Edmund read it carefully. The storm developed in under 8 minutes. Full rotation, stationary above the eye of Sheol. Lightning ascending from the ground rather than descending from the sky. Lightning rate at time of transmission is 11,000 strikes per minute. For reference, the highest strike rate in recorded history occurred during the tribulation year of 9,997 AD. At the volcano, the archive designated the Wrath of Abaddon, whose hyper-eruption produced 3,400 lightning strikes per minute and displaced 2 million people in the East African highlands. The Wrath of Abaddon was erupting. The Eye of Sheol, east of Enoch University, is not. No magma, surface lava, no ground deformation, no fumarolic expansion, no sulfur dioxide or CO2 spike above baseline, no ground tilt, no rockfall, no ash. The mountain shows every instrument reading of a dormant volcano. The lightning rate is 11,000 strikes per minute and still increasing. One of Morrow's field assets was monitoring the site for 11 years. His final notation: all standard classification frameworks were applied, and none were sufficient. The second field asset reported that his neural link, a standard field implant, brain integrated, designed for real-time communication and data translation, started reaching for translations on its own. In proximity to the mountain, the device started treating the electromagnetic field as an incoming language signal, searching it for pattern, for structure, or for something to translate. It found organized, recursive structure. Patterns repeating inside patterns, the way a language builds meaning by nesting smaller units inside larger ones. It searched its full linguistic database and returned no match. The asset could not determine whether the storm was transmitting or whether the device was misreading it entirely. Either answer was reason enough to shut it down. He was not going to leave an open channel to an unknown signal source connected directly to his nervous system. He turned it off and switched to manual instruments. Edmund stopped reading before he reached that part. His hands were still on the page. He stopped at the patterns, organized, recursive, repeating inside themselves the way language builds meaning. He continued reading. Thermal arrays confirm the heat signature below the vent has increased by 1,000 degrees in 20 minutes. The instruments can find no destination for the energy discharge. Edmund looked up from the report. Aldrich was standing with his hands at his sides, looking at the wall above the console. Everything about his posture said he already decided, and was simply waiting for Edmund to catch up. The archive suggested Satan would move immediately to consolidate power when the release came, Aldrich said. A throne city, a faction stronghold already built, positioned and waiting for him. He paused. The volcano is not that. No, Edmund said. The house of Azazel and the children of the cauldron both attempted contact. Neither reached him, Aldrich said. Everything was correct. The window and the execution. They got silence. The cauldron reached an entity. They described it as present but unformed, which means it didn't respond the way a fully realized entity responds. Every model we have was built on pre-imprisonment contact. Whatever is at the top of this mountain, the archive has never encountered. Aldrich's voice carried no self-recrimination, only the clean sound of a model being revised. 2 variances in the first hour of the new age, the timing wrong. The form of emergence unknown. Aldrich processed both with the same precision he brought to everything else. Most men defended their predictions. Aldrich simply updated and moved forward as though the revision was always the intention. Edmund spent 34 years watching his brother do this. It was both his greatest gift and the thing that made him most dangerous. A man who absorbed being wrong that quickly, never fully felt what the wrongness cost. Edmund learned to notice when the part of himself that wanted to say something, and then to hold it until the timing was right. This was the distance between the brothers that no Carrington document ever named directly, and that Edmund never said aloud even to himself, because naming it would have required deciding what to do with it. The descendants maintained everything. Edmund could read it in every confirmation, the structure intact, the knowledge preserved, the positions held across the millennium of careful stewardship. They had done exactly what the Carrington plan required of them. What the plan could not require of them, what 1,000 years of Christ's direct governance had made structurally impossible, was the instinct the work required. Isaiah had prophesied it, and the millennium had fulfilled it completely. Nation did not lift sword against nation. They did not learn war anymore. 1,000 years of actual peace, not administered warmth, but the real thing. And the descendants had been born into it, lived inside it, and died having never once navigated genuine darkness. They were historians of a war they had never fought, archivists of a practice they had never practiced, trained in every protocol the Carrington archive preserved and untested in all of them. The wolves had arrived. The sheep had no memory of what wolves were. That was why Edmund and Aldrich slept. Not to preserve the knowledge, the descendants had done that. They slept to preserve the men who had operated the network at the peak of the tribulation, when the cost of every decision was real and the margin for error was zero. The brothers slept through Christ's reign of peace, to wake up on the other side of the enforcement of peace, as the only people alive who remembered what the work actually felt like from inside it. "We need to move," Aldrich said. "Now." Edmund nodded. The Eye of Sheol was on the Carrington maps. They both knew what sat beneath it.